Good morning, my name is Arian Hanafi. I'm going to be presenting about Neptune and contemporary culture, specifically the incorporation of King Neptune and the U.S. Navy. So without further ado, in this presentation, we're going to be talking about the history of King Neptune and the U.S. Navy shellback ceremony. So the history of King Neptune. Within these slides, we're going to talk about how he's the Roman god of the sea, his different relationships, and his origin story. So Roman god of the sea. So the Romans believed that King Neptune was the god of the sea. Neptune derives from the Latin word Neptunus, which means moist. And most commonly, he's depicted as an older man with a beard, and he's usually holding a three-pronged spear, which is also known as a trident.
I love you. I love you.
We're going to talk about his relationships. So Neptune was married to a water nymph known as Amphitrite. And most commonly, she's referred to be his wife rather than Salacia. He's got two brothers, Pluto and Jupiter, and his father's name was Saturn.
I blame you. Stubbornness is entirely from you.
So let's talk about the origins of King Neptune. As we mentioned, his father is Saturn, and his mother's name was Ops. And his father swallowed him and his brothers out of rage. He didn't like them. And his mother tricked the father into swallowing a stone so that way he could regurgitate the brothers. And so once that happened, the brothers all got together and decided we're going to go ahead and take over, and they all attacked Saturn, and they actually banded together and defeated him. And once they defeated Saturn, they split the world into three realms, and Jupiter took the sky, Pluto took the underworld, and Neptune took the sea. Neptune's also infamous for his violent and unpredictability and his crazy nature, just like the sea.
You would not last one day in the Navy.
So let's talk about the U.S. Navy shellback ceremony. We'll talk about its origins, the ceremony's traditions, so the shellback ceremony's origins. It dates back to the Middle Ages. All different navies have had some sort of crossing the line ceremony, is what's sometimes referred to as. It was originally intended as a way for sailors to test their seaworthiness. And like I said, it's also referred to as the line crossing ceremony. It actually has originations in Vikings. They used to hold a crossing the line ceremony when crossing the 30th parallel. But back then it was more of the Vikings would just basically beat up the junior sailors to see if they were worthy of a long sea voyage. This tradition continued with Anglo-Saxons and Normans, and it was adopted by the British Navy when Roman tactics were introduced to the Naval War College in the 1400s, and that's how it's carried over into the U.S. Navy. Among other navies, we continue this tradition to this day. So the ceremony's traditions. So the ceremony has a general rough outline that there will be some version of this done by all navies around the world, specifically our Navy. So usually King Neptune and his royal court, which usually is his queen, Amphitrite, Davy Jones, the royal baby, and other dignitaries, they all arrive to the ship the evening prior to crossing the equator. Polywogs, which are sailors who are not yet shellbacks, entertain the royal court with a talent show. This is usually dancing, skits, poetry, some sort of way to make a fool of themselves. After the show, the polywogs receive a subpoena from Davy Jones to stand before the court the next day to answer the charges brought about them by King Neptune, which will usually be something along the lines of posing as not a real sailor, and you have to prove your worthiness of being a sailor in front of King Neptune in his court. So the next morning, they'll get breakfast made for them, which is usually made way too spicy to eat. The accused appear before King Neptune, who sits in judgment. They will perform a variety of activities, which might involve from wearing their clothes inside out, or crawling across the deck with food and debris and all sorts of gunk and stuff like that. Basically just being embarrassed. After that, the pollywogs will kneel before the king and kiss the royal baby's belly, which usually is covered in lard or some sort of grease. And it's usually the fattest, hairiest person they can find. And lastly, after that, the pollywogs will take a royal bath in a pool of seawater before being declared as shellbacks, after which they receive their certificates, which can proudly hang on their wall at home. The certificates will usually read at the top, Imperium Neptuni Regis, which stands for King Neptune's Empire. So I'm going to give you guys some photos and examples of the ceremony. Here we can see some pollywogs getting some sort of gunk poured on top of them. It looks like food waste from the galley, possibly. This is the kissing of the royal baby's belly. This would be a tube that would be filled with some sort of food waste, usually, and the pollywogs you can see here are crawling through, and these are all shellbacks that are taking part of the ceremony. Here we can see King Neptune, who's asking a pollywog to kiss a fish for him, probably in some sort of sacrificial manner. See a pollywog being, looks like spanked maybe by a shellback. This is a more modern photo of what today's ceremony would kind of look like, where they're getting sprayed by water. It's not so much hazing as it used to be back in like the 80s. And this would be a shellback, and this would be a pollywog. And here's a couple examples of what the certificates might look like. You see up here it says Imperium Neptuni Regis. This next one, Domain of King Neptunus Rex, Ancient Order of the Deep, Trusty Shellback. You can see photos of King Neptune and what looks to be water nymphs, or yeah. And again here, Imperium Neptuni Regis. Again, you see King Neptune and different sea creatures. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.